I'm back, fellow armchair generals. This is Gamer 1745 here. And we've sort of jumped back, rolled back a little bit because I was testing the connection of Cologne to Berlin with it sort of integrated with what we already have here, and it was just not creating an express lane. So we're going to have to build an actual complete express railway here. But I am playing with my friend IKB. Say hi, IKB, to everyone.
Hello, everyone.
And I think the questions are from Jeff, but we have some questions here that, if I remember correct, I don't remember what they were, but they were pretty good ones. So we'll let IKB read what they are and answer them as best he can.
Okay, so first question I've got here is, when the early trains stopped being a novelty and people saw the huge potential of railways, did the British government get involved in route planning, or was it open season for anyone with the cash to build track between locations? In the UK, it was a literal case of, if you had the money, pretty much do almost whatever you wanted, railway speaking. Laissez-faire capitalism at both its best and worst.
Okay.
There were essentially bribing MPs to vote to get their bills to build their railways through Parliament. The government had no idea or what it wanted and was just like, well, these people have money, why not let them build? It basically started a railway bubble, not too dissimilar to, say, the dot-com boom of the...
And back in the early 1930s in America, there was a radio bubble as well, with massive amounts of like small radio stations. So a small town would have 4 or 5 radio stations that financially advertising could not support it, and they all burst too similarly.
Yeah, it was very much like that. You had people running around advertising, shares in railways that, from one little farming hamlet to another little farming hamlet, or from, one place that was vaguely on someone's mainline route to a little farming hamlet.
Right.
Something that would probably never actually make any money if you did the cost-benefit analysis, but money around people were like, well, it must work.
Right. Yeah, I can see that would be. Now I have a question, because you said bribing members of parliament. How did the railways get their land? Because I know, because you mentioned parliament and that, I know through much of the 18th century you had land enclosures in Britain in which you would have, presume this is a small town, the people living in the small town in Britain had access to certain areas of common land and similar sorts of rights around, and they would actually have to go to Parliament to get that overturned and get, sort of buy off, if you will, pay off the people with common rights and similar things, and those would all have to be acts of Parliament. Did they go through Parliament to like condemn or seize strips of land for the railways, or was it purely just pounds buying?
It was where they could sort of buy sort of on the open market, they did. Part of your UK law that was worked out pretty quickly based it off the pre-existing legislation for things like turnpike, private turnpike roads that you had to pay a toll to use, was that you needed an act through Parliament to be able to legally create one. Legally create a railway company. Part of having that legislation behind you was that it gave you certain abilities for sort of what would become known as today as sort of a compulsory purchase order.
Right.
To essentially say, out of the sale for the supposed common good, this land has to be sold to the railway company. But
yeah, in America, it's generally called eminent domain, just for people who are
Yeah,
used to the
same
American.
similar thing, yeah.
Yeah, saying
And it
that
went,
it's supposed to be in America. It's supposed to be like, oh, we're forming a town and we need to have a hospital or we need to have something that's truly for the public good. It's over abused in America that they can seize land and they sort of set what they say the market price is and pay for it, like that.
there was an awful lot of the deadline date that was set for having to have your bills submitted to Parliament.
Mm-hmm.
Sorts of chaos. There were people would teams from different railway companies who were going up there to turn in their documentation and present their why their railway should be built, would with each other and coming up with all sorts of strange and interesting plans to try and delay the other companies past the date so
Mm-hmm.
that they wouldn't be able to build anything that year.
Right.
And there's even there's crazy stories of one company actually holding a fake funeral to smuggle the plans in a coffin.
Ah.
They could figure that no one's going to try and disrespect the dead.
Right.
So they figured, right, this will work as a way to sneak our plans in.
I don't think they did anything that in America, but there was a lot of physical violence over where railways going, in which the different track gangs, if they were to the point, not probably some gunshots did happen. I would probably say that, but people definitely got killed. But it was often with axe handles and other things that may or may not be lethal if you get hit with. And there was a lot of that going on. Okay, what other questions do we have?
The questions we have is, the railways expand into Scotland and Wales, or was it built out from Scotland and Wales to join into the rest of the railway network? Sort of and roundabouts, because there's especially because the more sort of industrial areas of Scotland and Wales, where you've got large coal deposits
Right.
and such, there was sort of there that sort of ran from the coal mines down to the nearest port on a river,
Okay.
or in parts of Wales where it would run down from the valleys with the coal mines to
Right.
the coast or to the nearest navigable bit of river or canal. And some of those got sort of integrated into larger railway schemes, and others sort of. But there was actually at one point, the Caledonian Railway Company that almost exclusively operated within Scotland.
Okay.
And there were various other companies that are either almost entirely had almost their entire trackage or their entire track length was within either Scotland or Wales and such, and there were various other companies trying to compete that overlapped.
Okay.
Complete mess, really.
Right. Sounds that way.
The other question is, who decided and when did carriage length and width become a standard size?
Well, that's interesting.
And that these things like that, such as how wide and how long carriages were going to be, and other things like how where you would put the couplings between them and what sort you would use and things like that, decided by this what became known as the Railway Clearing House, which was a sort of neutral meeting ground for the various different railway companies, where they could together to come up with solutions to sort of shared problems. Like, okay, we need they very quickly saw that there was a definite benefit to being able to use one person's rolling stock on another person's railway.
Right.
And it was Clearing House was sort of created as sort of a neutral-ish body that would work out how much mileage fees for having a train or wagon from one railway company travelling on another one's tracks. Also acted as a place where they would decide upon, universal standards that they would all follow.
Yeah.
So
Now, I'm very much in agreement with the idea that you should companies should be forced to allow competitors to roll on your tracks, just so that you don't have to have two sets of parallel tracks, one for each company. But even if you didn't have that, just simply the idea that there's a standardized width, it would ease manufacturing considerably. If you're building whether it's engine or the rolling stock for one company or the other company, it wouldn't have to be tailor made to it. So that's all good.
the
Any other
actual
questions? Yeah.
the actual track gauge was set by law after the sort of battle of the gauges between Brunel's broad gauge at 7 foot wide and sort of standard gauge at 4 foot 8.5 inches.
So I'm gathering, since it's wide gauge, you're saying Brunel lost.
Brunel lost, yes, but oddly enough, the commission that looked into it came to the conclusion that Brunel's was technically better. It was so much more standard gauge track that it was logistically and monetarily just so much easier to say standard gauge wins
Okay, yeah, that
by being
I can
standard,
see
basically.
just simply how much there's already out there. Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
And the final question is, who supplied the timber for the sleepers, or railroad ties as they're called in America?
Right.
I'm basically asking you, did it come from within the British Isles? Did it come from abroad?
Mm-hmm.
Initially, it sort of started being local, oak or other woods that could be found commonly within the UK. Once things started getting bigger and there was sort of more drive on sort of material science, as it would sort of be called now, they started to look for wanting better woods for it that would last longer.
Right.
Look at certain sort of tropical hardwoods, and even today, common to have some of the more sort of common and sort of plantation grown tropical hardwoods are still used as railway sleepers in the UK, and I'm assuming in other parts of the world to this day.
Okay. I'm used to seeing railway ties, sleepers, whatever, that are soaked in a material like, I don't know, kerosene or something, I think, to make them last
They're
longer.
generally soaked in creosote.
Creosote.
Is
Okay.
the which does a very good job at preserving them. Have an unfortunate habit of, if the weather gets too hot, it does sometimes start to leak out of the timbers.
Right.
Who works on the railway and is often walking along the track, you'll often get it stuck to the bottom of your boots.
Right. I can imagine
And
that.
it is really quite sticky.
I can imagine that. Okay, well, thanks. That is really helpful. Okay, so everyone, and that is the last question, right?
Is the last question there.
Okay.
So thank you very much, Jeff, for sending those in.
Yeah, and if anybody else wants more questions answered, we'll be happy to do so. I do take the education part of what we do here relatively seriously, though we want to have fun. Okay, so what we need to do is build a Cologne to Berlin expressway to keep keep our progress going. So that's going to override everything else. So what we're going to do here is, well, first let's bribe our way in. We don't, that's sort of technically what we're doing, into this section here for 4 million marks, so we can get access to there. And I've temporarily put a supply tower there so that we just can, we're going to eliminate the track from there, but he's going to get stuck and wait there while hopefully he can't get through. He's going to hopefully quickly go. Ah, that could be it. Okay, let's change your... Yeah, we have a minimum 5. Let's go minimum 3. You're overdoing it, so that way you can go. Free up the track. Okay, pause. Now we're going to delete that and delete this station. Now I think we can keep having a station on this line, but I want to make it a proper with signals, more expensive, so that things will flow through here relatively efficiently, and we can make it super wide if we need to. Yeah, okay. Okay, so we have that, and now okay, let's start in this position here. We're just gonna go carefully along, keeping the terrain in mind and trying not to either overextend by doing too much terrain, you know, following, but also try not to overly, you know, build tunnels through mountains or bridges over areas that don't need to be. I'd rather have a slight grades of 1 or 2%. Don't seem to affect too much in this game. Now I've made peace with the idea of bridging over, but going under with these silly tunnels I've yet to make peace with in my mind. So we're making sure that we are bridging that. And we want to bridge this as gently as possible. Okay, we can get to a 3% grade there. Now I did test this path out, and I was able to get an express train to actually eventually work. Okay. No. We need to switch over and actually build our destination. Okay, so we're going to build a large train station here in Berlin. This is also trickiest where there's a, whatever that is. The Brandenburg Gates, I think is what that is. Yes, that's the Brandenburg Gates. Are sort of in the way and influencing our ability to build a large train station here. So we're going to have to basically build it here and have a bridge sort of going over the swampy areas there. So I think that is more or less
go ahead. Build a station right in the middle of my city.
what we can eventually do here. And come back to the railways and we'll click that point. Let's check. Yeah. We're doing to that one. Okay, so that I think is about the best we can do for Cologne to Berlin Expressway. And we don't have to fiddle with the long whole track. Just make one spot there, and there we go. Okay, so now back to here. We want to make that going that way, so the train can now get through to our wool sheep farm, I guess. That one we will bring the there we go. Now I have seen them start to build up, send rails to there, so I'm going to fairly quickly. So I'm going to just simply build some track to there. No, like that. Okay, just to either block them from doing it, or at least make sure we have ground level access and don't have to try to. But it was so close that it was just zipping right up around here, and there was like no way to build anything that would come out of this station. So we want to prevent that. So we have, and they can still try to go around, but we can reorganize that as needed. Okay, so we have a very long railway. We're going to need some supply towers along it. We can leave that one there. Now, eventually we may connect this railway up with other things, like, you know, coming into Brandenburg. And we may do that fairly quickly. Well, you know, let's just dump a train station here in Brandenburg, even though we're not going to connect it up right away.
Sure, go ahead. Build a station right in the middle of my city.
There we go. Yeah. She didn't like that. And we'll do another supply station. No, supply station. Here. Okay, now. A few additional signals around. We already have a supply station there, so we don't need this one. Yeah. But we will. Okay, I'm hoping those two trains running there, which we probably don't even need both of them, but won't slow up our express. So we want to go from Cologne to Berlin. We only want to carry mail and passengers. We're going to add a locomotive. Yes, this is our fastest one, the Hulda. And for engineers, we're going to take a really fast driver. And we're going to take a reasonably fast stoker. And let's throw on a caboose, which will help the speed. And then from Berlin to Cologne, started off in that direction. Oh, did I make sure? And the same engine with now similar, but not the same guys. Okay. And rail cars caboose. In Berlin, yeah, we're not picking those up either. Oh, they are following, yeah, they're following our special track. Okay, so that was expensive, but it gets us our needed speed, and hopefully with no real delays. Okay, sausage maker in Lissa. Where is that? That's down here. 300,000, yeah, we'll bid on that.
Congratulations. You bought a, thing?
Okay,
As we all know, the Germans can't function without sausages.
No, they need their sausages. Just like you English need your tea.
Yeah, and you Americans your coffee.
Yeah, though I'm weird, I don't drink coffee. Let's see them coming here. Speeding along. Okay.
Right now, Gamer, it looks like we've got quite a few research points. So shall we look at
Yeah, we can. Let's take a
your-
look. Let's take a look. Okay. Okay, a lot of tractive power for that engine, but I don't know that we need it right away. We got better ones already. Ooh, well, 41. No, we are already moving faster than that. Though at less tractive power. Tyson 10-wheeler, that's okay. Well, I think petroleum lamp will increase our ticket prices and also unlock some other progress. And we can look at train instructions, which will help prices from that. So we'll do that. That's good. Okay, as these trains are starting to near each, well, not that near each other. I don't want to spam out too many trains on this line and have that slow things up, but I do want to have at least 4 trains running on such a long line. So what we're going to do is sort of wait for them to get somewhat near each other. And there we are. Okay, we're going to copy this train, and then we're going to come here and we're going to specify some personnel. Again, speedy ones and not on the Berlin route. they don't like each other. Okay, well, they will at least tolerate each other. And we already have the rail cars. Good. And this train here, the Berlin starting point. Let's copy that. And again, come here for something that's going to give us speed. There we go. Okay, so now we have 4 trains running on that line, mostly exclusively, just a little bit to the wool farm, sheep farm.
Oh no, what bad luck.
Oh. We need to add in a maintenance shed there.
Up. And make sure you add a maintenance shed at Berlin as well.
Yeah, I just did. Okay, what we can see about doing here is was a warehouse a good idea? Yeah, that sort of is a good idea here. Wouldn't that be? Okay, so we could do a warehouse here. Why didn't it do that?
Your additional station isn't going to affect my business.
Okay, now can we come? We'll have to go north around this, I guess. Yeah.
That gets us wheat and hops.
Yeah. And this will also be worked into a non-express route to Berlin. If we were to come from here, get across these swamps, which Berlin is sort of built on a swamp.
Make me wonder why people chose to build their capital in a swamp, but
yeah, it would seem uncharacteristic for the Germans who plan things out well. I don't know the story of why. I mean, I'm sure that there's a river and good things that would, for a, I don't know, a 14th century city or 17th century city, weren't such a big issue, and they were probably on relatively good land, kind of thing at that point. Okay, I don't like that bridge, but I don't know if we can avoid that one. Let's see if we move this. There we go, it's much lower. Don't have a 14-degree. Okay, and that ties that into here. There we go. That's some reasonably good engineering. And once we achieve the goal of having the express train, we will connect this a little more directly into the other one. You were saying?
Saying Brunel would be proud of your accomplishments.
Well, thank you. Okay, so Let's stick that in there in the middle. So for right now, let's do a Brandenburg to Berlin. And we'll carry just about everything. And we'll do a consolidated. I think that'll be a good option. We have a conductor. Let's add the conductor to our one of our other trains. Oh, they don't like each other. Okay. They can maybe get along. Yes, they actually get along well. Okay, so they're actually friends. Don't know if that actually gives an in-game benefit, but other than just not having a problem. Okay, so back.
Now, of course, in real life, you would most certainly want your, especially your locomotive crews, to be a good working relationship, because they have got. You know, it takes two people really to manage a steam locomotive of any meaningful size, and it is most assuredly a team effort.
Oh, I'm sure it is for within the locomotive. One thing I just not, you know, whether if it was a long expressway which we've just built, or if there was just town to town to town to town, the same, you know, train that same distance, you know, a non-express train. I'm sure the conductor and the security guard do interact with the train crew, and if there was a particular problem relationship, that could be a problem, but I don't know that it would be nearly as critical as, like you're saying, the engineer and the stoker that really need to get along really well.
Yeah.
Okay, and we'll do that because we're going to move local goods here. Now, we also have a free slot here, and I think combination of we have the money, we can pick what the thing is going to be, and we'll also make money out of it if we pick well. We should pick the industry. So up in Oldenburg, what can we put in Oldenburg that would help in the region and we have relatively close to supply? I already have cheese and meat in Bremen, and bread and furniture there.
Have wood reasonably close at Warehouse 5.
Yes, we do have wood, and we have leather over in Bremen, but we do have furniture down here in Essen. But
What about things like trying to start the tool making chain?
Okay, tool making and precision engineering are not yet viable for us.
Right.
So, well, can we go back up? Do we have steel somewhere? Because it looks like some of those require. No, they don't require steel, but they do require iron. So, yeah. Okay. Fruit and whatever these other things are. Turnips or something. Okay, we have. What are they there?
Turnips and
what are these? Oh, sugar beets.
wheat.
Okay, so if we have sugar beets, where's fruit? Is that anywhere near here? I was thinking for a candy factory. Got wheat up here, so we can get wheat, and we got wheat down here that we could easily route up to there. Where's fruit? I guess I know there's fruit like way down here, but I don't want to go through all of this mess. Okay, there's fruit here.
Is there any further north towards Denmark?
Let's look. Let's look at maybe. No, I think we're getting too north for
Sugar
fruit.
beets, probably, yeah.
Okay, I'm going to go into one of my sort of rant phases here for a moment. Okay. And I do know that we do have some Europeans watching, and that they all seem convinced that global warming's happening. We've got to, no. They're also convinced we've got to do something about global warming. Our hair's on fire. We got to do something about global warming. One, when you ask any really informed person, I'm talking like a climate scientist guy or woman, whatever, I'm not being gender in specific here. Ask them, what is, the ideal global temperature for the Earth, whether for mankind's living on Earth or whatever. Find out what that is. And I know it isn't, because it varies, but go and say, is it what it is today? Is it what it is, or is it, a little bit less than what it is today? Or what is it more? What is the ideal temperature? Define, please. Give us, now they may be wrong, but please give us a definition of what the ideal temperature is. Okay, first that. Then, because I just heard within last week, there's a new study that was done between Finland and Japan they were working together, scientific groups, that they said that man plays no role in global temperature. It's clouds, it's other things, but man plays no role. Well, I'm not saying man plays no role. Okay, their conclusion was man has no ability to affect it in a real way. I'm not saying we can't affect it. I'm not saying man doesn't affect us. But one, what is the best temperature? Is it what it is now, or is it just that we happen to be here? Because again, and we're going back here because we're looking at fruit here, and this is making me look at this here and what prompting this. And I know I'm speaking to some people that have already heard me on this topic, but I think it's important. We are probably because they didn't have mercury thermometers back then, and we have tree ring sizes, but is it temperature that determines how trees grow? Maybe after a few more 100 years we'll be able to do stuff. So tree ring growth we do have, but we don't know if that's temperature. Again, could be clouds and how much water it is, and other things for tree rings. And ice pack growth in where? In Antarctica? Because I don't know if you can do it. I don't know how well you can do, hundreds of years old or thousands of years old ice in the northern, because there's not land under it. So I don't know that is as stable and datable. And the southern hemisphere from the northern hemisphere, I don't know how good that is. And again, is temperature the primary determinant to how much water is deposited on the ice? And so, is that the main temperature, or is temperature the main reason for water levels being deposited on the ice? Coming down in snow and packing down and all that stuff. So we don't even know that. And so I firmly know that they used to grow good winemaking grapes in northern England. They used to do that in the Middle Ages, in the Middle Age warm period. They used to do it there. You cannot do that there today outside of a hot house or something similar. So it used to be warmer, and we had a mini ice age in the past, since the Middle Ages. And then the sort of classical era, we know the Romans really had trouble expanding outside of olive oil range. And yes, they were shipping olive oil, but also, obviously this map doesn't go to Hadrian's Wall or Antonine's Wall up there, but that was sort of the limit of Roman agriculture, again, needing it to be warm. So, yes, man may be causing climate change, but what is the ideal climate? And what should we do about it? Now, you go, oh, well, yeah, but we need to do something. Well, doing something isn't necessarily a positive thing, just something. And then you'll go to some of the people, and they'll go, well, yeah, but isn't a cleaner environment better? Okay, yes, but at what cost? And so you mean we should pick up the trash and not litter on the street? Sure, yes, great. Most cars in America, at least all modern cars in America, have catalytic converters which reduce smog emissions. Yes, I grew up in an LA when there used to be smog alerts out there. There are no longer that. So a bit cleaner environment is good, healthy. I'm all for it. But at what cost? If it starts costing lives, or if that's not acceptable in my opinion, just simply a cleaner environment. And at what economic cost? Now, do I want, we can, again, libertarians, you should be able to do what you want, anything you want on your property. Okay. Yeah, to some degree I agree with you, again, to some degree. But if your property is right next to the Rhine River or something, do you get to dump anything into the Rhine River? Well, yeah, because, see, the environment is, to a degree, a shared thing. So I get, now I'm not a big, what's the term I'm looking for? Altogether. Oh man. The opposite of an individualist.
Activist?
Yeah, collectivist. Thank you, IKB. That's it. You could go to the extreme of the libertarian or anarchist world, which is the complete individualist. The other extreme is like a communist or a Nazi or somebody like that is a complete collectivist. Okay, there's a big spectrum in between those two. I'm more towards the libertarian side, well on that half of the spectrum, but there is still a collective element here that, yes, you should be able to play your music, and you should be able to play your music loud in your backyard party. But at some point it gets too loud, and again at some point it's too late at night that you should be allowed to be, the police or somebody should be able to come by and go, hey, yeah, it's midnight, you're being too loud. So even though it's on your property in your backyard. So there is a collective responsibility. Again, where on the spectrum things should be, that's, and that's up to debate and up to each society. And especially if you're talking about a small society, I keep using this, let's go Denmark, since it's just sort of the north to here. They can probably, and since, at least until recently, have the same sort of culture, so they can probably more easily determine when, noise levels, and how late at night and whatnot more easily, because they have the similar culture, similar definitions, and it's a smaller society, and they can figure that out more easily than a larger society or a multicultural society like in America, where it's not only that, hey, there's noise, but it may be god-awful noise to you. It's music to somebody else, but it's god-awful to you. Let's go something non-controversial, but that most people will probably agree with. We really don't want a neighbor who constantly, even if it's, noon, playing polka music fairly loudly every day. That would probably drive most modern people insane after a while. So, there is a collective responsibility at this. And so if you're talking about major companies that pollute, yeah, they need regulation. I agree with that. Now, I believe in California, we've already gone to the level of over-regulation, where if you look at between China, India, and a few other places, they put about 80 to 90% of all of particularly plastic pollutions into the ocean, out their rivers. So they're the main cause of it. So yes, there is plastic pollution going out from California, but for the amount of pollution per citizen here in California, it is minuscule on the world level. So we are already doing more than enough, you know. So please, and so yes, but how are you going to correct the environment when you're literally going to have to march armies into places like India and China to force them to do something different? And so how many people are you going to kill to have a clean environment? And yeah, if they were still doing surface tests of nuclear bombs and putting a bunch of radiation up in the air, and they were doing those weekly and whatnot, yeah, at some point, yeah, we would have to attack them if they were truly, you know, doing something completely heinous to the world. But until that happens, we have to not just do something about the climate. You have to know what can be effective, what's the cost, benefit, all of that, and figure all of that out. Okay, end of Gamer's rant. Now we're looking at fruit here. So I don't know that we can find... Well, we've got fruit here. Now how do we get it past Cassel without going through Cassel?
Could always build a little bypass around Cassel.
Yeah, we've already sort of done that here. But is it worth it? Is it worth it? I don't know that it's worth it. Okay, let's see. Hanover. What? Okay, we need to see what Hanover needs. Okay, they don't need candy yet at all. They don't need furniture yet. They don't even need cheese yet. Okay, they could use wheat beer. So, do we look at that maybe? Just because it's not that far away. I mean, there's some other smaller towns in the path. So, okay, so that would be this brewery, I guess. So they did say wheat beer, but okay, with the hops here. And we, I think, have hops somewhere. Before I just plunk this down, I thought I saw... Oh yeah, right here. So we have hops down here from this warehouse 6. That would be easy to get it to Oldenburg. Okay, so that's what we're going to build. Yeah, I guess we'll put it on this side. Town. Okay, so they need that. So we need to come here. Got a bunch of stuff in warehouse 6, but we're going to not ban other things, at least to start with, but prioritize hops. Okay, and oh, I want the clock to run a little bit just so that they start realizing that they need, the demand has gone up here for this. Okay, that's probably enough. Let's get a consolidated B. And run that up. Okay, so that will supply it with hops until it's sort of full of hops, and then supply other things as needed to there.
Now, of course, strangely enough, needing a brewery before you can get onto some heavy industry and such makes... Because at the time, beer was probably safer to drink than the water.
Yes, that is a real thing. And you can make beer, I'm not saying the German beer was, but you can make beer that isn't terribly alcoholic, so that you can feed it to your children without being, you know, it's still being safer than and better than the water. Though that is one, quite honestly, IKB, that is one of the reasons I think Here's another historical speculation. One of the reasons I think Britain was able to conquer the world the way it did was tea. There is most assuredly an element of international trade in it. By, hey, this is profitable, we can make profit, and so we start sending ships all over the world and back, and then needing to, have some sort of, resupplying bases, food, water, that kind of thing in the sailing ship era. And that's sort of the era I'm talking about. I think the idea that the British drinking tea and that you needed to boil the water, would make it safer to drink than a lot of other people's not doing that. And so I think, although we do know that people got all kinds of deadly diseases spread through mosquitoes and other things, cholera and whatnot, going to India and Africa, the British conquerors, explorers, businessmen, but I think having a fairly large amount of tea, and probably because of that, not drinking as much water, probably allowed them to do better than some other groups of people trying to do similar things.
I have heard a theory that relates not so much to tea, but more to the coffee and the sort of coffee houses.
Right.
What we'd probably now refer to as cafes. Lines of once coffee became more widely available and people started drinking that with their friends instead of drinking alcohol, that the switch from drinking alcohol that is depresses your nervous system and your thinking abilities to something like caffeine that gives you loads of energy.
Right.
Caffeine gives you loads of energy. Sort of things like the Industrial Revolution and of the Enlightenment, where people had by essentially giving people more energy during the day to.
I could see that as being a factor.
Yeah. To get back to the discussion on beer.
Right.
Amount of beer needed for general consumption at sort of round about this time period. Today, I actually went up to some of the museums around Ironbridge in the UK, sort of more or less the birthplace of the Industrial Revolution, and they have a sort of replica early ironworks there.
Okay.
And
Oh,
daily
how
ration
fantastic.
per
That means your
man of
locomotives has
beer
finally set a record.
at the ironworks was 12 pints a day.
That sounds a lot.
Admittedly, this is working in with molten / red hot iron, so
Right.
you're probably going to sweat a lot of it out.
Yeah.
But and he did say that it was beer back then was weaker than it is today.
Right. And I do know that there are significant variables there.
The figure I was quoted was around about 2% alcohol content, but of beer a day.
Yeah.
Gives you an idea of the quantities of alcohol being consumed at the time.
Let's actually increase the size of these breweries. I want them to start. Okay, yeah, we'll buy the funding program. looks like another city's available to build a factory in. I'll go to 300,000 if need be.
A bid from you? You're just bluffing.
Okay, well. Now, Brandenburg. We can put a factory in Brandenburg. You know, looks like we could do another brewery there. Yeah. That'd be the perfect thing for there. We have the hops up there, so yeah, we'll stick it right down here, I guess. No, we'll put it over. No, we'll do it to the north. There we go. So now they will be able to supply straight out through here. Now, I don't think we've achieved our goal yet. No. Okay, these guys are still moving as fast as they can.
Gamer, do you think maybe we should start looking at more stocks and shares in our rivals? Because I have spotted them sneakily buying some in us.
Well,
some of our stocks and shares.
Eventually, we do want to put all of your competitors out of business. That is quite true. But we can see here is after we get this express connection done, it's secure 16 areas, and we currently have 9. So we're going to need a lot of money for that over time. So I don't know that we need to really do that just yet. So at some point, yes, but I think it's banking money as well as expanding our railways that will help us out. See, here we can come down to here. We're going to create one that sort of cuts off their expansion ability.
Don't you also think that this station was a dumb idea?
No, I don't. Not really. There we go.
And then, is there some way we can look to connect from sort of warehouse 8 area over to Brunswick?
Yeah, we probably have to go over the tracks to do so. I've just sort of been reluctantly, or I've been sort of avoiding that decision, though we probably will need to. Okay, and this could be my problem here. Let's expand this up to complete width. Make sure it's not slowing anything coming through here. He's moving right now at 62 miles per hour. So there isn't a much more direct route to go. A little bit, but not much. I'm still worried about this because it's date isn't the problem because we're well ahead of schedule there, but it just either it's going to work or it isn't going to work.
Now, Arno's in chat and he's asking for a ride along on the express from Cologne to Berlin.
Okay, we could do that. That's a good idea. Okay, we'll get that train as it heads back. Okay, they're hitting 70 miles per hour. Okay, let's jump aboard. Thought we'd... although we're getting repair work done. Okay, we're being loaded, so let's get on board. Okay, off we go. We're already up to 70 or 69 miles an hour. You see our other rail line going off that way to the warehouse. Back along our train and down at track view, but I don't like that terribly much. Now this of course is a good way to see if there's any holdups. Like here, why are we stopping here? Why are we waiting for? Oh, no. Back. We're going again? Okay, just water and oil. Made it up to 71 miles an hour. That's our warehouse, I believe. There we go, that's what I wanted to do. Look around. I don't know which is the best railway, because I know there's Railway Tycoon. I don't, from what little I know of it, quite honestly, I think this is better than Railway Tycoon, but I don't know. I haven't played it, Arno.
I did in the past play Railroad Tycoon 3, which is quite an old game by now, but it is, and I wouldn't say it's graphics-wise, this is far better, but in terms of sort of gameplay mechanics, it's sort of half and half between the two from what I've seen of this.
Okay.
In terms of really going much more in depth into how you set up your trains and being able to put your on the train and such, and being able to have forms of transport as well, I must admit that Transport Fever is very good.
Right. And I played it just a little bit, Transport Fever, and that does look good. Just quite honestly really lack of time. Okay, we're going on a bridge over our other trains here. I like sort of how we go from somewhat of a ridge line to ridge line instead of a pure up and over. Look back and see that back there.
Of course, transport does have a very large workshop following for mods.
Right.
To add different locomotives, different carriages. It's to, you know, play as Germany and have access to, you know, different types of, you know, locomotives, be they German or Austrian, or whether they be from, you, say, you know, Prussia or Saxony or such like. You can do that very easily with the mods that it has available.
Very good. Yeah, no, I do want to play that, because first I want to get through this, and I did this just because because I do have a fairly large viewing audience, and when we started this, it was just the newest DLC out for this. We're going to jump back to the older DLC, Brunel's, after this, and then we're going to see about doing the French DLC. That'll be late for that. Like you say, it's not getting very good views on the channel. It's not terrible, but it's a combination of I enjoy the game, and we're looking at different parts of history a bit and talking about that, which we... Okay, so we're there. We'll get back on. Look at. And so I really want to do other things than just talk about World War II, or even about Rome and Greece and whatnot in the Hellenistic era. So that's not forcing anybody to watch. They don't have to watch the episodes, of course. But so that's sort of what I want to do. And I don't... I've been playing the South American DLCs, and there's definitely things to talk about there, but it's not nearly as important to history, shall we say. Important to history in the region, sure, but not the world history. Now, we have not had a serious stop other than for getting supplies, which is obviously needed for this long of a rail distance. So I'll be a little surprised if we get through all this. This is probably for supplies. I don't know if we can easily see them pouring the water. Oh, this wouldn't do it. Okay, yeah. We're just coming into Cologne here, I believe. So I'm probably not going to continue this after the French one, unless they come out with, yeah, whatever. It's 100,000 marks. We can afford that. We just stored up a lot by not doing anything during the ride. Okay. So we are here in Cologne. Okay, well, we still haven't got our expressway yet, or express train status. I'm not sure why. This is a Cologne to Berlin. Let's add another one. Copy the train. Let's... Yeah, we can add new applicant Stoker. And... Oh, didn't add him to the engineer. Okay. Okay, they're going to be good buddies. We can throw on a conductor here. know this is achievable. Like I say, I've done it once. Now we did see, and oh yeah, the reason this thing here, no suitable freight here, and this is something that needs to do, this track is just too long between these two places, and so no passengers want to take it, so that is a thing. Express Weimar to Berlin, not at the, well, we may connect up through Magdeburg and run that. But I think that's going to happen next episode. I want to thank everyone for watching. Thank you for liking the videos. Of course, if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. And of course, like we did cover, if you have any questions, suggestions, please post them below. We will try to answer them in a future episode. Okay, let's